No matter how you feel about President Trump sending the National Guard to cities around the country, and regardless of whether it's even legal, the fact is it's costing you money, and a lot of it. Now, some of you may think this is money well spent, and others may not. Everyone gets to have their own opinion about that, but I am only interested in the facts and the numbers, which I am going to share with you right now. Let's start with President Trump's mobilization of 4,000 members of the California National Guard and 700 members of the United States Marines to assist in his ICE immigration crackdown back in June. During that mobilization, according to a recent ruling from a federal judge, the facts are those members of the military were not just protecting federal property and personnel. The judge found evidence that they were also conducting domestic law enforcement functions like taking protesters into custody and detaining them, and they joined the DEA on efforts to target illegal narcotics activity in 2 different California cities. The judge found those efforts began around June 7th when the president signed an order that federalized those National Guard troops, and then the bulk of those military members started to go home in mid-July. So according to an announcement made today by California's governor, that month and a half cost the American taxpayers a total of almost $120 million. $71 million was spent on food and other basic necessities for more than 4,200 members of the National Guard and 700 Marines. $37 million was spent on payroll, $4 million was spent on logistics supplies, $3.5 million was spent on travel, and $1.5 million was spent on demobilization. Now, according to the governor, these numbers came directly from the California National Guard, which, of course, the governor of the state is the commander-in-chief of. The governor's office said that they had requested these numbers from the Trump administration directly, but they so far have refused to turn them over. It's important for you to understand, because these guardsmen and Marines were federalized, that means the nearly $120 million came from federal tax dollars. That's your money, money that could have been spent on any number of things. Do you think it was well spent? Again, that's for you to decide. And while you're thinking about that, keep in mind, it's not just that $120 million that you're on the hook for. That tab is still running because the efforts in California aren't the only ones going on. On August 11th, the president signed another executive order that mobilized the Washington, D.C. National Guard, and then several other governors sent their troops to Washington, D.C. to engage in crime-fighting efforts. Right now, there are about 2,200 guardsmen, along with other federal law enforcement on the ground. But all of them have been federalized. That means you're paying for them too. Of course, some of them are engaged in crime-fighting efforts, which the Washington, D.C. mayor has said, yep, those have been helpful. But lots of those military members are just sort of walking around D.C. and being visible in popular tourist destinations to perhaps deter crime from happening in the first place. They are also participating in what the White House calls beautification projects. That means our National Guard troops, who are usually responding to crises here at home, like hurricanes and wildfires, or being deployed overseas in combat roles and in peacekeeping missions, are now in Washington, D.C. picking up trash, raking leaves, and laying mulch. So how much is that costing you? Well, the White House has not released an official cost breakdown, but experts believe the price tag on the low end would be about $1 million a day. So simple math, these military members have been in D.C. for 24 days. That means so far, the efforts have cost, at a minimum, $24 million. That's, of course, on top of the $120 million in California. And there's no sign of Trump pulling these military members out of D.C. In fact, he's talking about sending the National Guard to other states, which means these costs are just going to keep racking up for you. So if you want to read this cost breakdown for the National Guard in California that was sent out by the governor's office, I'm going to email it out to you in my Facts HQ email tonight, so make sure you sign yourself up.